There we go. Had to activate the microphone. Hey, it's Monday night. It's 7 o'clock. It is Campaign Chat Live, the only live streaming campaign update from Oklahoma's 68th District. My name is Michael Ross. I am the Democratic nominee for House District 68, and I'm so glad you could join me on a drizzly, kind of cool Monday night in May. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, if you're watching this live, you can see it on my website. Also, I archive this to both Facebook and YouTube for anyone who wants to share that link. We'll make social media links available later in the broadcast. Remember that this is also a interactive program that if you would like to tweet at me, my Twitter tag is at Ross4OK. And as time allows, we will get into questions or comments from you. So do keep that in mind, that is welcome. With that said, let's get right into a couple of things that are kind of pressing because, as you probably know, last week the legislature gavelled back in. They are back in session. They have constitutionally about 2 weeks left to finish out business for the year. I have seen a couple of reporters indicate that they may attempt to close things out sooner rather than later. And we were told at the beginning of this return to business that the focus would be on pressing matters dealing with the COVID-19 crisis and with the state budget. And we've already seen our legislature kind of get flexible with what they think a priority bill looks like. Case in point, last week we were extremely excited to share the news that the state Supreme Court had actually ruled in favor of the people of Oklahoma and making it easier for you to vote by mail. And the legislature promptly prioritized fixing that little gosh, that little judicial decision there, and proceeded to hustle through legislation that reinstated requirements for you to have a notary, or there's a wrinkle due to COVID. I'll get to that in just a moment, but I wanted to give you guys the background on this vote and why this is something that we in District 68 need to be aware of when we consider our options for who to send to represent us. So the original bill was House Bill 1779, and by the time the legislature gavelled in on Monday, it magically transformed 2 more times, taking on 2 more numbers and 2 more bills until it became Senate Bill 210. Senate Bill 210 was originally written for something completely different, and in fact, the language that that reinstated the notary requirement was not germane to the original language of 210, but unfortunately, arguments stating that fact fell on deaf ears, and by the end of the day, the House had voted to return to those old ways. And in fact, by the end of the day on by the, oh my gosh, it's been quite a week. By the end of the next day, the bill had actually sailed through the Senate, and the governor prioritized signing it. So unfortunately, once again, you do have to have either a notary or, in the case of COVID, they have said that you can include a photocopy of your state identification, whether that's your driver's license or a copy of your voter ID, whatever that may be. They have made that small concession. If you watched floor debate, if you watched the questions throughout the day, it became very, very painfully obvious that the proponents of this bill were not acting in good faith. They claim that it's to prevent voter fraud, and on its face, that sounds like something we can all get behind. The problem is that Voter fraud in vote by mail cases in the state of Oklahoma has happened a grand total of twice. And both times were instances where the problem was not with the voter, it was with an error in on the part of the notary. So they're trying to create a solution for a fictitious problem. In fact, in states that do have vote by mail that do not require notaries, this has not been an issue. And we've seen states like, for example, Colorado, Governor Hickenlooper uh, signed the orders to send a ballot in the mail to every registered voter so that every voter has that opportunity, which is such a forward thinking, proactive way to ensure people get to vote without risking their health and safety. Our legislature, our governor, apparently don't think like this. And that is no more apparent than in the conduct of our Representative Sims. If you look through his public statements in the last week, you'll see, first of all, he doesn't address this unless he's pressed on it. For example, one constituent very plainly asked why this needed to be a priority. Why, when there are so many other matters that are really at the heart of most Oklahomans' concerns, why did we have to take on this uh, non-existent threat to vote security? Um, Lonnie proceeded to pile on paragraphs that did not answer the question at all. They did not say he did not make a case for why this was a priority. Beyond that, he voted he voted for 210. He voted to make you have to get a notary or send in a copy of your ID. I have this secondhand. This is not something that I can verify directly, but I was told that his reaction when people pointed out that there are folks within our district that do not have access to a copier or a printer, that his response was that everybody in his neighborhood has a printer. He lives in one of the wealthiest precincts in our district. The mode for household income in his precinct is well over $100,000. Contrast that with Precinct 139 in the north end of our district, where that's a tenth, or the mode for household income is a tenth of his precinct. It's short-sighted. It's a failure to serve the whole district, and it gets worse because when floor debate was occurring, uh, several representatives very succinctly debunked the claims for why we needed this bill. I'm thinking of Representative Andy Fugate from Midwest City did an excellent job of pointing out that by requiring a photocopy or something of that nature, that it was effectively instating a poll tax, which it is. The State Open Records Act values a photocopy at, I believe, 25 cents a sheet. 25 cents or $25. If you're requiring people to pay money to vote safely, you are, in fact, instituting a poll tax, which is unconstitutional. And Representative Fugate pointed out that we're not protecting Oklahoma's voters. What we're actually doing is we're setting up lawyers for organizations like the ACLU to make a pretty penny challenging this and winning, most likely, in court. So there were these very, very thoughtful, very astute arguments. Like I said, Representative Fugate, Representative Waldron from here in Tulsa. I'm a little partial to Representative Waldron's arguments because social studies teachers, we recognize our own. Um, and then when I look to see if Lonnie had offered any kind of justification for his vote, the timestamp on his Facebook indicated that when floor debate was occurring, he wasn't paying attention. He was posting on Facebook about a new exhibit at the Oklahoma Aquarium. Uh, he's really excited about the octopus, which I don't blame him. cephalopods are really, really cool. I myself am a PADI certified scuba diver, and you know, I've never gotten to see an octopus in the wild, but yeah, they're neat. They're cool. They're not more important than your right to vote. They're not more important than letting you know what's at stake. If a representative is going to vote on something that is so foundational to our freedoms, they need to be accountable to us. Whether or not we agree with them, they owe us that explanation. Um, Full disclosure, my wife is one who pointed this out. So I want to make sure that all cards are on the table. She pointed out on her Facebook page that this was his priority during that time, and he replied that he was doing his job. Thank you for noticing. Representative Sims, your job is not to be PR for an octopus exhibit. Your job is to represent your constituents. Point blank. That is what you are paid to do. That is what voters vote for you to do. And whether or not you agree with your constituents' concerns, you owe us a justification. You owe us a sincere explanation for why you do what you do. That's my philosophy on representation in a nutshell. You know, leadership isn't making people like you or telling people that the easy stuff, the fun stuff. Leadership is being able to look people in the eye and lay out the facts. Speaking of laying out the facts, we had a faculty meeting for my school this morning, and speaking of leadership, my principal was kind of outlining what to expect going forward into the 2020-2021 school year in light of the state's funding crisis. We were told, honestly and candidly, that our district, our site, rather, excuse me, our school, would see a pretty substantial budget cut. He said that the cut he's looking at is over a quarter of what the budget was the previous year. That's a pretty severe tightening of the belt. And, it should say something that this is, this is a statewide crisis. This is not just a Charles Page High School crisis or a District 68 crisis, but ensuring funding for education, funding for our schools is something that is a common concern across the board. And so it's with this in mind that I need to point out to you guys that we have essentially a voucher bill that's being pushed through right now. It is, I believe, Senate Bill 407. And you need to know that what it does is it effectively funnels more money into, quote, scholarships to allow students to go to private schools. The problem is that I believe the cap for household income to receive these scholarships is somewhere around $140,000, and the average scholarship received through programs like this is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000. What that means is that you've got essentially a tax credit that's going to people who are choosing to send their kids to private schools. And I gotta say, I would challenge anyone to find a private school that will take $2,000 annually as a full tuition for a student. You're not going to find kids who are coming from financially challenged homes who are able to make that choice. So what 407 effectively does is it strips more funding out of the coffers for public ed, and it puts it in the pockets of private ed. I've been very upfront about this since day one. Since day one in 2018, public money belongs in public schools. I would encourage you to be sure and contact Representative Sims, make your voice heard, let him know that you expect a no vote on this particular bill on 407. I would encourage you, comment publicly on his Facebook page. He does respond over there, and it's a way of getting him on the record. He needs to publicly assert how he's going to vote on things. Again, whether or not he agrees with what we ask of him, at the very least, your representative owes you truthfulness and forthrightness. Um, Last thing, and this is something we will dive into in a future installment. I don't want to tie up too much more of your evening on something that can wait a week or two. He did take to Facebook to show how, shall we say, sensitive he is to criticism about legislators receiving a substantial pay increase in the next session. If he's reelected, he gets a major pay increase. I'm trying to remember the percentage off the top of my head, but effectively, a representative will make as much as a career track teacher with over a decade in the system in the next session. The short answer is this actually isn't a bad thing. It's just a matter of bad timing. The problem is that he chose to republish another representative being rather thin-skinned about this and chime in with his support for that representative. It's not a good look when you are a representative who keeps your very high-paying day job, which Representative Sims has done. In fact, he was posting pictures just recently on his Facebook of him on the job installing fire safety equipment at the old Rose Bowl. He kept his day job, which pays him well enough that he was living again in a very affluent precinct compared to other precincts in our district. Sending his child to a private school, driving a luxury SUV. He's living a very comfortable life, and his side gig pays more than a first-year teacher. Next year will pay almost equivalent to what I make right now with almost 16 years in the system, and I'm only 4 hours short of a master's degree. So you're talking about a pretty wide discrepancy in someone's full-time job versus somebody's part-time job. It's not a good look to whine and complain about that, but there he is doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up tonight with a couple of reminders. If any of the stuff that I've said tonight has riled you up, if it's gotten under your skin, if you agree that we deserve better, that we deserve a representative who at the very least will communicate with you and will justify positions and is willing to have those hard conversations on a regular basis, then I need your help in this campaign. Of course, we're living in extraordinary times, and right now I have not reinstituted door-to-door canvassing because of concerns over COVID. What we are doing instead right now is we do have a telephone campaign going, and what I would ask you to do is take a look at this video I'm about to show you and consider visiting our events page on Facebook. You'll find it facebook.com/Ross4OK. Consider visiting that events page, getting the information for our May phone bank, which will run through this Friday, and commit to making just 5 phone calls. They average about 2 minutes each. That's 10 minutes of your time in the next week. That's it. To let people know about our campaign. It's a short script. There are 2 questions. That is it. It's super easy, and you can do it from anywhere. Take a look at this video. All right. So, having taken a look at that, again, visit ross4ok.com. Well, ross4ok.com is our website. Visit facebook.com/ross4ok to go to our events page and sign up and get the code and the script and make 5 phone calls. Real quick fact for you, statistically, every 35 calls that's made nets 1 additional vote. So that means that if you are willing to make 5 calls, and if you can call up 6 of your friends and say, hey, we can make a difference here, if 7 of you call 5 people each, statistically, you're going to get us a new voter on board, and every vote counts. So please, please, please consider doing that. Finally, remember that even though the notary requirement has been reinstated, absentee voting is still the safest way to vote, and it's incredibly easy to request your ballot. Also know that if you are a notary or if you're becoming a notary and would like to help people get their ballots notarized, shoot me a message, either Facebook, Twitter, email me at mike@ross4ok.com, and we're going to be compiling some resources. And I know that there are other organizations compiling access to notaries for folks, but we want to make sure that you can vote easily and safely as early as this June. So here's one last video for the evening. Take a look. This is going to give you a rundown on how to vote absentee in just 1 minute. So have a look. It's just that easy. So please, please, please get those absentee ballots requested. Remember to vote yes on State Question 802 to help expand Medicaid to more Oklahomans and add federal dollars into our funding formula for healthcare. Remember, take precautions out there. Use personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, and everything. Do remember that this is a people-powered campaign. We are not accepting money from corporate PACs. Everything that you see is funded by people just like yourself. So do remember that your contributions are appreciated. Have a wonderful, safe week. Remember, you can get in touch with us through social media anytime. Uh, please remember to like, share, retweet, repost, all that good stuff, because word of mouth is the best possible endorsement I could ever hope to get. Have a great evening. Be well. I am off to go continue a run the series with my daughter. We are watching the Marvel movies in order, and I think tonight is Iron Man 2. So have a great night, and we will see you soon.